everyone, we are starting our first paint night in a very long while. Today we are using a 6x6 canvas, and what I'm doing right now is I'm adding water to the back of my canvas so I can stretch it out. So I suggest that you do this to every canvas that you paint with. So I'm adding water. It's kind of dirty water, but at the same time it still works. So it really shows you where I am putting everything. I'm going to then take it and put a blow dryer to it to let it dry. So today what we're going to do is we are going to be painting an apple. So I am looking at the apple, I'm looking at the best position to put it, and I'm going to set it down so I can have a really nice cast shadow and a nice place where I'm going to be painting all the different textures on the surfaces of the apple. For this painting, we're going to be using acrylic paint. You can use any kind of paint. I'm kind of showing you what I'm using. I'm using Liquid Golden brand paint, but I'm also using some Blick White. So I added a lot of white to my canvas so you can see what I'm going to be using each time. Here are some paintbrushes that I'm using. And now I'm showing you what my canvas looks like. So it's really, really strong right now. So with every canvas that I paint, I first start off with a layer of acrylic paint. I add color to the background so I know what I'm going to be painting on, and so I can see what I'm painting with. I like having a light layer of color in the background. It kind of helps with the when you're painting on a white canvas, sometimes it's a little bit kind of hard to get started because it is a white canvas. But I like painting a color in the background. You guys can choose whatever color you want. You can use light green, or even you can use black if you'd like to. That might look really, really nice. So it's your choice. I'm using white with red and yellow. You can use any type of red and yellow you want. I'm taking a larger brush from the 3 that I had, and I'm just laying a layer of paint down. I'm going to get all the way to the edges, and I'm keeping the same similar strokes, little brush strokes. They're about 3 inches each stroke. Anytime you need to pause what I'm doing, or pause so you can catch up, you can go ahead and do that. So if you need a pause and then catch back up on the video, you can do that. Now that I've painted all of the edges, I'm going to go ahead and start painting the apple. I'm going to take a thinner brush and I'm just going to do the outline of the apple. I'm starting first by finding the center of the apple where the stem starts, and then I'm going to work my way around it with a circle around that. And then I'm going to add a curved shape to the left, and you can pause it if you need to. A curved shape, kind of an organic shape to the right, and then I'm going to connect the two. So the apple that I'm using is not completely round. There's edges that are kind of bumpy, and I'm demonstrating that with this apple. I'm also going to be outlining some of the areas where it might be yellow or red or pink or light orange. So I'm just giving myself a little bit of a map to start filling in later. I'm noticing that there are some bumps and edges. I'm putting that in as well. And now I'm starting to fill in some of the areas and edges. Some of the background color is coming forward because it's mixing with the red that I'm laying down. So it's adding a layer of pink. I really like going light with my paintings first and then darkening them later. If you get into watercolor, this is very, very important. All right, I'm blending it in. And if you need a pause, you can pause and then start again. Now I'm adding a light line for where I'm going to be putting the cast shadow. So this cast shadow is hugging the base of the apple. It's demonstrating that the apple is on the top of a surface. I'm just using red just as a background layer, just an initial layer so I can paint on top of it later. It is mixing with the background color right now, but that's no big deal. It's acrylic. You can always paint on top of it later. Now I'm starting to add a little bit of yellow on the apple that I have. It has a little bit of yellow, has a little bit of red, it has lots of different streaks. What I would like you to take into consideration is the surface of the apple. So the surface of the apple, you can see some of the lines that are going vertically. So I'm keeping that into account as I'm doing my brush strokes. The direction of the lines I'm trying to simulate in the apple that I have right here, or the apple that I'm painting. As I move forward with the direction of this apple, what I'm doing is I'm adding more color and more saturation as I go. So the painting is starting to dry a little bit, so the background color isn't mixing as much. So what I'm doing is I'm doing my edits. I'm editing the areas that have more red. I'm adding more red, more yellow, and so forth and so on. So you can watch me do a few strokes, pause. You can do the same. Watch me do a few strokes and do the same. And pause and look and paint. Pause, look and paint. Now that I have a really nice base layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of teal or blue, whatever you would like. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be mixing this with red and yellow to make browns or a neutral color. And I can add a little bit of white as well because there's some neutral colors inside the center of the apple. I'm also going to be adding some greens, and then in the end I'm going to be adding a really dark blue with some black. So pay attention to the colors that I'm adding and pause, and you can apply and paint. So the neutral color kind of looks almost gray. That's the center of the apple. It's really light. Like I said, I always start really light first, and then I layer upon that to make it darker. I just want to make sure that's what I want to put down, the color that I want to put down first. So it's kind of like a rough draft. And then I'm going to be adding the final touches, the darkened colors, the more saturated colors in the end. Just as important as the apple is the cast shadow, and that's showing that the apple is on top of a surface. So it's not just a floating apple. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of blue to the cast shadow, and in the end I'm going to darken it quite a bit more and saturate that color. I'm also going to edit the cast shadow shape because it isn't the direction that I want, the shape that I want. So I'm going to edit that by painting the background. So I'm going to be painting the background again, just a little bit on the edges of the apple. So just as important as the apple and the cast shadow is the negative space. So negative space is the stuff that's around the object that you're painting. So I'm going to sharpen my apple and sharpen the cast shadow with the warm background that I have, that color. You'll see as I go that I am going to continue to add more saturation, darkening it a lot more as I go. So I'm going to continue saying that, but I really do like layering, and this is my style of painting. There's so many different types of painting styles out there, and this is one that I would love to share with you. One thing that we do see in when an object is on top of another surface is a bounce back of the light that is in the room. So I am going to be adding some bounce back underneath the apple. So it's going to be just a tiny bit lighter near the base of the apple, where the cast or the shadow on the apple is being demonstrated. So you'll see that I'm adding a little bit of light green. I'm also going to take some artistic license and add other colors to the apple. So it's going to be a little bit more colorful than we do see in real life, but I'm using my artistic license. If you want to use your artistic license and add more red to your apple or more green to your apple or even violet to your apple, that's up to you. Use your discretion. I am now making my edits to the ground and cast shadow. You'll notice that I have like a red line. I'm going to be going over that so you don't see that anymore. I'm going to be making a few painterly brush strokes so that we're able to make it look like it was intentional. So I'm adding a little bit of white, blending that into the background. So with acrylic, you can always go over any mistakes that you've made. And And sometimes you want to leave some of those mistakes in because they turn out pretty cool, but I didn't like that one, so I had to take that one out. I'm now just sharpening all the edges using that same color or same similar color because it's not exactly matching, but I do like how it's turning out. Again, I'm going in with more saturation. I'm adding brighter yellows, brighter reds, some blues and blacks, and so forth and so on. I added black to my cast shadow to really create a little bit more dramatic color change between the apple and the cast shadow. And now I'm adding in some more details, especially to get that stem coming forward just a little bit more. It's pretty dark, so I want to make sure that the viewer sees it as a stem coming out of the apple. So I'm creating a little bit of darkness behind the stem, and then I'm putting just a little teeny tiny bit about a tiny bit of like a highlight to the stem. I'm just using pure white for adding in some of the highlights to the apple. So I'm putting that on the stem and some shiny parts on the apple. And like I said before, you can use your artistic license and put some more shiny spots on the apple to create a little bit more interest and to demonstrate the surface of the apple being a little shiny or having a sheen. Last but not least, you have to figure out your signature. So right now I'm practicing my signature on my palette. So you want to do that first. Practice a little bit before you put it on. I'm using a really thin brush in order to draw my L and my C that is curving my L. So that's for my middle name. You can see what I've used. You can see the perspective that I was looking at the apple. So you get a good idea of what I was looking at while I was painting. And there we go. We have our apple.